When you are applying for a job, are you sure that your resume will stand out? Today, I want to talk about the basics when it comes to writing a good resume. Hi, I am Pixelpia. I am a teacher and a lifelong learner. And as I said, today I will talk about how to write a good resume. I will talk about the basics, about the 3 different types of resume, how you can structure it and design it so it maybe stands out a little bit more. But first of all, let's talk about the differences between a resume and a curriculum vitae, a CV. A resume should be written specifically for each job application, while a CV, on the other hand, describes your total work experience and education. There are also differences between different countries. For example, here in the US and in Canada, you usually use a resume when you apply for a job. In UK, Ireland and New Zealand, it is more common to use a CV. And in places like Australia, India and South Africa, they are both interchangeable. But you usually use a resume when you apply for a job in the private sector, and a CV when you apply for a public service position. And as I said, a CV is a longer document that is a complete overview of all your job experiences, all your education and all your skills. So today I want to talk about the resume. In general, there are 3 types of resume: a chronological, a functional, and a combination of the 3. The chronological resume is probably the most common one. And in this, the purpose is to show how your work experience make you the most suitable candidate for this job. And in a chronological resume, you list your work experience in reverse chronological order. So you start with your latest job and go backwards. A functional resume, on the other hand, focus on your job experience and your skills, not in chronological order. Instead, you start with the ones that most closely connect to the job you are applying for. This type of resume works very well if you, for example, have gaps in your employment history, or when you are applying for a job in a new sector, in a new industry. And as you probably have guessed already, the combination resume uses parts from both of these. You can, for example, use the professional summary and skills from a functional resume and the reverse chronicle work experience from the other one. So let's talk a little bit about structure. There are certain sections that should be included. Some of them don't have to be in a specific order. They can depend a little bit on what kind of job you are applying for. But the first one should be your contact information. And it is important to remember that if you work in a word processor program like Words, not to put this part in the document's header. And the reason for this is that many larger companies use software to do a first scanning of all applications that comes in. And not all these software can read what's in the header. They might not be able to read your important information like your name, your email address, your phone number, which are the most important details in this section. You can also add a link to social media, to a personal website or your YouTube channel if you have one, if that is suitable for the job you are applying for. I could, for example, if I am applying for an online teaching job, include the link to my YouTube channel. Another thing to think about here is your personal email address. If that happens to be, for example, fluffy54 at whatever, maybe you should change that and get a separate personal email address for your job applications. Another section is your professional summary. This should be very short, 1 to 3 sentences in which you explain who you are, what you are doing, and why you are the best candidate for the job. When it comes to the professional summary, it is important that you focus on what you can offer the employer, not what you want. Next, we have the skills section. This section can include skills specifically for the job you are applying for, but also personal growth skills like leadership, communication, and other examples that can be of value for your employer. Another section that's important is your work experience. And this depends on if you're writing a chronological or a functional resume, in what order you list your work experience. But there are a couple of important things whether you use one or the other. You should include the company's name, address, phone numbers, maybe a contact person. You should include what your job was, your title, and what you actually had as a function. And you can also have some bullet point of accomplishment you have reached while doing this. We also need a section of education. Today, many jobs that you might apply for requires a certain level of education. This should be very short and direct. Just write the name of the school, when you attended, and your degree. You can also add a section of additional experiences. This could be things like volunteer work, hobbies that could be of interest, and other facts about yourself. And the purpose of this is to create a more well-rounded picture of who you are. So let's talk a little bit about design and formatting. When it comes to formatting, it's very important to choose an easy-to-read font. And here it depends on whether you're gonna send your application as a digital document or if you're gonna print it. If you are planning on printing it and handing it to someone, I would choose a serif font, for example, Times. But if it's gonna be a digital document, I would choose a sans serif that's easy to read. It's also important to pick the right size of your font. I prefer 11 pt, but anything around that, 10, 11 or 12, is usually a good size. And when it comes to decorating, be sparsely. A little color here or there is okay, but the purpose of your resume is to keep it as clean as possible. Another thing to think about is how to save your resume, what format. I would suggest not to save your resume as a PDF file, unless they specifically ask for that in the job posting. And the reason for this is that these software I talked about earlier that many larger companies use to do a first screening of applications read PDF files as pictures. That means that they can't collect any information out of a PDF file. So your resume would just seem like a blank document to them. And as I said, in general, try to keep your resume short, 1 to 2 pages. Now, I want to talk about editing. And the first thing I have to say about editing is never edit when you're just finished. Wait at least 24 hours before you open that draft again and start editing. And why is editing so important? Well, this is when you can find spelling mistakes, when you can find grammatically errors, but it's also where you can find places where you maybe have used too many words, where you could have expressed what you want to say in fewer words. It's also important in the editing process to be factual. Make sure that all names of places you have worked in are correct, address information, all the factual things you have in your resume has to be correct. Remember, if you can use fewer words and make it easier to read, you will probably have a bigger chance of someone actually reading your applications. And if possible, ask someone that you trust to read and give feedback on your resume. I hope this video can help you in writing a great resume. In my next video, I will talk about digital portfolios. And don't think a digital portfolio is only for artists, photographers, filmmakers, and other creative people. I have one as a teacher. And if you want to learn more about digital portfolios, hit that little subscribe button and the bell next to it so you get notified on when I upload. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and maybe share it with someone that can use these tips. And remember, never stop learning.